Hello and very welcome to Abir Pothi, the special edition of Samvaad. My name is Nitish Tyagi and I work as a editor in Abir Pothi. Today we have a very special guest, this time from Nepal, Surabhi Chaudhary ji, and she's the director of Chaudhary Foundation, and Chaudhary Foundation runs a great initiative called Unnati, which is, I'm reading from this intro, catering toward the sustainable development of traditional livelihood programs and women empowerment. Unnati's policy philosophy of revival and survival of national heritage through forms of crafts, dance, music, foods, language, habitat, and essentially encompasses the philosophy of life by which civilizations once thrived in culture and traditions. They remain relevant and they have a kind of future. Uh, Surabhi ji is also heavily invested into art and promoting artists from not only for Nepal but also from India. I know about some artists who had been to Unnati and worked around it. So, but then you are the founder and you are the director of this project. So, why don't you tell us more about Unnati?
Thank you so much, Nadeshji, and thank you to Abir for giving us the opportunity to share about Chaudhary Foundation and Unnati's works. Um, so, Unnati was founded as a livelihood program for women and their entire financial empowerment, and it has very organically grown. And as the program and the projects evolve, we felt the need to encompass all kinds of traditional and artistic industries that are very much relevant in the rural and urban spaces and form an integral part of livelihoods and ecosystems in Nepal and So while this is a program that is driven primarily to economically empower women and their various practices, livelihood practices, it also is designed around preservation and promotion of national and cultural heritage. Um, Heritage and culture forms a very integral part of our life. It's not only it's a way of living. Actually, it's what it identifies our identity and our being. And due to fast urbanization and modernization, a lot of cultural and traditional practices are now being forgotten and are not unfortunately as relevant today as they once were. So, through the Unnati platform, while we do a lot of artistic and creative projects, we also find ways in which these projects can be synergized with the artistic communities to preserve our heritage and our traditional knowledge systems. So, we combine both the factors and we work very closely with that. We've started out in Nepal. We are the first cultural center that's doing work like this. It's multidisciplinary. We have we run across foods, language, habitat, arts, culture, dance, music, crafts, various traditional livelihoods we're engaged in. So, apart from giving this platform for the creative and artistic ecosystem in Nepal, we are also reaching out to the whole of South Asia. And we're doing a lot of work and a lot of creative collaborations with the neighbors of South Asia. Yes.
So, if I were to meet you anywhere outside Nepal, and like if you had met for a coffee in Delhi or elsewhere, if I ask you about, I mean, how do you kind of describe this whole the current and contemporary art scene in Nepal? What will you tell them or me?
So, contemporary art scene is actually extremely interesting because today the world has moved. There's been a huge shift from traditional art to contemporary art. But I feel what's really unique about Nepal is that we've really retained our ethnicity and traditional style of working while making it very modern and contemporary to suit today's requirements and modern aesthetics, without really losing the traditional identity and touch of it. So, if you really see contemporary art of Nepal, it's very much influenced and inspired by traditional architecture and art forms, usage of colors, designs, motifs, patterns, ideologies, mythology, ethnicities. but its interpretation is extremely contemporary. It has taken on a very contemporary form, and while retaining its ethnicity and its traditional style. So there are a lot of young artists. Also, say for example, if you really want to look at contemporary art of Nepal, there are fantastic printmakers here who are doing extremely interesting screen and interesting forms of printmaking, and they are using very contemporary versions of traditional designs and making it a very interesting mix of the modern and the traditional. And then there are folk artists who have taken on a very contemporary form of folk art of Nepal, and they've really contemporarized it, whether it's our Mithila art or whether it's the Tharu art or the traditional arts. Most recently, you will find our Thanka artist over here, who was a very traditional Thanka artist who's now being showcased at the Venice Biennale, which is
Wow.
a contemporary. And Nepal had her first pavilion at the Venice Biennale in 2022, and it was extremely successfully received. And this traditional Thanka artist has taken on a very modern take on Thanka art and Buddhist paintings and contemporarized it, and we showcased it at the Biennale.
So, but could you please also name that artist and who and the journey of that artist and how all of this happened and how Unnati was part of it?
So, Sharing Sherpa is the name of the artist. We are not directly involved with Sharing's works.
Hmm.
He's tied up with a gallery in New York and Rossi from Hong Kong. And they are the ones who have represented him on an international platform. But we have but to give you an example of what the contemporary art scene of Nepal has, what shape it has taken, that's an example that I have shared. And many such artists like Anne Shering have participated in various other biennales across the world in a lot of interesting art shows and exhibitions. And currently, Unnati has collaborated with many such young and upcoming contemporary artists, and we plan to showcase their works in some of the programs that we are planning in the future.
You have some kind of collaborative arrangements with Raza Foundation and uh, Art Think South Asia, I saw. So, I mean, and how is it shaping up, and where do you think it's going to go?
Our platform of Unnati is actually a space. It's one is I would like to just highlight a few things about it. Is that one? It's a platform for artistic expression, but it's also a learning center. It's a cultural center where we have a lot of cross collaborations, projects, residencies. We have an art gallery where we have shows. We do festivals. We participate in a lot of festivals that happen outside of Nepal to take the Nepali art on an international platform to show it to newer audiences. We bring in a lot of like minded institutions to come and harness the creative ecosystem of Nepal as well. So, all these collaborations are an effort to educate and promote, essentially. So, when we tied up with the Raza Foundation and with ATSA and with Khoj, it was with the intention of enriching the residency spaces and to do collaborative projects with the Nepali and Indian art ecosystem. That was one. And the second was for a training program that we did in the art management space. So while we are preparing artists for a more enriching artistic expression and enriching their style and their working ethos, we are also doing a lot of works to help them become better managers of their
Hmm.
own practice. So arts management is what we did with Khoj and Atsa, and a lot of young gallerists, curators, artists, photographers, writers, journalists attended that workshop, which was extremely critical, even for art critics, because art critique is a space that has not really, which is still at a very nascent stage in Nepal.
Yeah.
So, to really harness these various skills that are extremely important in supporting the art ecosystem and to make people better managers in this space, we had this program, and it was for the young, the contemporary, and the emerging artists. So, we have many such programs that are programmed in our calendar throughout the year, and we are very young. It's been only 2 years since we've launched ourselves, but we've done many such initiatives.
So does it like it's only between I'm just curious because it's just India collaborative, or are you also looking towards say China, because I mean, because it's culturally it's in the center of both very strong civilizations and their influences. So is there something? Are you doing anything with from the Chinese side as well, or is all India?
It's not all India. Like, so as I said, we are very much looking at collaborations within the global south. We've already started collaborating. We were part of the organizing committee of the Dhaka Art Summit, and we represented ourselves at the DAS that happened this year. We've already collaborated with AUD and Urban Island in Sri Lanka. We're doing a lot of works in India. We participated in Serendipity Arts Festival in Goa about 3 years ago, where we sponsor Nepalese artists to showcase their works there. We were part of Kochi Musea Biennale. We've done the art residencies with the Raza Foundation, arts management with Khoj and Atza. So we are looking at collaborations now with Pakistan. So we are very much looking at a very enriching, engaging platform for the global south to really come together and work together. We've also been recently appointed as cultural ambassadors to Asia Society
Wow.
from Nepal.
Hmm.
So we've started, in our small humble way, started reaching out and having meaningful crossovers with our neighbors in the global south. And yes, we are also very much open to having more engagement with the Far East and the Southeast as well. So China comes in the Southeast side. And but because Nepal, as you rightly said, is nestled between both the big countries of India and China, we are also looking at having crossovers with the Southeast neighbors.
It's also about the young artists. I mean, so when you are because Abir is also very focused about to promote and spot and nurture young artists in India. And so, how do you? What is your template of spotting, nurturing, training? I mean, like training you were talked about. So, how do you go about it?
Yes, so that's a very good question. So whenever we are really designing our programs, whenever we are planning a calendar, we also do a very strong needs assessment based on the needs and the requirements within the market space, within the education space, within the artist requirements. So we do a lot of samvad, and we do a lot of introspection, and based on the introspection and conversations that we have internally and externally with various stakeholders, do we really design programs that would have long term and meaningful impact. And for the audiences and participants in these programs, also we do a lot of introspection and study. And every time we look for new engagement in audiences. So, say if we are doing something in the management space, it would be more with universities and with students from the urban spaces, because they are the ones who would be good managers in the long term, who would give support to this ecosystem. But when we are looking at artist residency for craft and art, at that time we look at artisans and artists, and they could be from the rural as well as from the urban spaces. So it just depends on the program and the program design that we are introducing, and based on that the audiences are selected.
And how, when you integrate all these, like so you're already there into to more than, I mean, not just India, like Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. You're going to Pakistan, which is wonderful. So, how does this, look like the whole? If you say the South Asia village, it's like almost like getting into a South Asia village kind of a thing, which otherwise it's like slightly uh, difficult to envisage in these times. So, how does it like, how do you work around all these, if you can call them, the differences and similarities, which are both are like stark. In fact, there are so many similarities between Nepal and India, and India, Nepal, and Pakistan, or say Dhaka. So if you can talk about that, that's a very, I think, to my mind, it's a very interesting kind of an issue, that how we see those
Yes.
both
So that's
things.
also a very interesting perspective that you've called Unnati Cultural Village, the South Asia Village. And that is really actually an aspiration that we have, is to bring various stakeholders from the global South together on a common platform to really engage and synergize with each other. not just creatively, but it's also a soft power of relations and cultures between our neighbors and our countries. The inspiration for this came about because our journey within ourselves would have really been very incomplete if we had not extended ourselves to the global south, because essentially our DNA, our history, our region, our civilization has not only memory but a very strong connect. So if you really look at our social fabric, our cultures, our languages, our practices, our beliefs, the way our cultures are designed, they are not very different from each other. They are all very similar. We work with similar topography, regions, languages, belief systems,
Yes.
foods,
Yes.
um, festivals. It's We have more similarities than we actually have differences. The differences have only been formed in the very recent
Yes.
20th century. Before this, our civilizational memory goes back to thousands of years. So when you actually connect with your neighbors on a cultural platform which is not political or geopolitical or socially political, it's actually a very enriching connect, and it's only through the arts that this connect can actually happen, can be
True.
fostered. It has evolved together over a long period of time through a lot of civilizational history. So, say for example, we are looking at doing a tapestry or a pottery residency where we would be having artists from all over South Asia coming and really working together on, say, something as simple as the ikat or jamdani or the
Yes.
dhaka, we call it. But these forms were neither originated in Bangladesh or in Nepal or in India or in Afghanistan. It actually took place from the Mesopotamian times, which traveled to Afghanistan, which traveled to Pakistan, which traveled to India, to Nepal, and to Bangladesh,
Yes.
and they all took their own forms. So you can't really say that any one craft or art belongs to any one country in isolation. It's
True.
all a germination from our history, from our civilization. So it's very important to go back to these roots and to rediscover these techniques, these practices, and to make artists also work together, because and this can only happen through art. So these are so this is essentially what our philosophy is. So when we
Yes.
design South Asian projects, we very much keep a lot of our history and civilization in mind when we are designing them.
So, Surbhi, since you are also into livelihood and sustainability, how do these artists or young artists from Nepal, whom you are grooming and promoting, how do you help them find a market? How do
Okay,
you?
so
Yeah.
that is so we have various pillars under Unnati. So through the trainings, the women they receive better tools, better equipment, better usage of material, better guidelines of using their resources and their existing skill sets to make products that are savvy for the urban market, for today's market requirements and demands. And then we have various marketing platforms by which we link them to the market, making the entire ecosystem very self sustainable. We also impart a lot of entrepreneurship skills to them, because there should not be a heavy sense of dependency on us for their production or sales. So we also encourage local to local production and sales and consumption, whereby the women's groups are producing locally and selling locally as well. So there is not a constant dependency on a mediator or a broker or a buying house or an agent to constantly support them. They create a very self sustainable ecosystem within themselves. So, this is another pillar that we have under the craft and livelihood. Then, foods and organic farming is our third. Arts and culture, I have already spoken about.
Yes.
Cultural hospitality is what Unnati Cultural Village is all about. So, through the hospitality space, a lot of people get groomed and engaged through cultural hospitality, and they become and they immediately get absorbed into the market space. And then we have the South Asian uh, project that we just spoke about, which is called the SAT project. And SAT is for 7 countries, and it also means together.
Yes.
And the full form of it is South Asian Association for Transcultural Heritage. So these are the 5 pillars of Unnati. And yes, so for sustainability and craft and livelihood and empowerment. This is what we're doing.
And since Nepal has gone through some, difficult times, through this very difficult earthquakes and all, so I mean, I think you're doing something around the local architecture and using those, earlier kind of,
Building materials.
uh, yes.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So it's very interesting, we did a very big project right after the earthquake that happened in 2015. And what we realized is that the traditional design that is used in the villages has very scientific and sound um, knowledge systems behind it. So, A, the materials are locally available, and B, they were also not completely earthquake proof and resistance, but they suffered a lot lesser damage during the earthquake as opposed to foreign buildings and materials that were used during the construction. So we really went back to using traditional building materials, and because of not only the scientific and traditional wisdom set behind it, but it's also very adaptable to the region and to the climate. So it can be rebuilt easily. Local materials can be found very easily. Local skill sets for building of such homes can be developed very easily within the ecosystem. And then when we engaged in such practices, we also built the local skill sets in such a way that tomorrow, if such a calamity were to strike again, the local community has the capacity to rebuild their own homes without having the dependency of someone to really come to their rescue. So we really worked in a very, so whenever we really do a project, we really study and do a very deep analysis of material, of geography, climate, traditional practices, traditional wisdoms, and the science behind it. And then the program is designed accordingly. So even Unnati Cultural Village, if you see the buildings of Unnati Cultural Village, our cultural center, has been used with the local materials and local skill sets of that space to really showcase that space. And it is it is it is rather heartbreaking, I must say, that we are the only living cultural village now in that entire area, because the entire space around us has become so urbanized and modern, which also is a sign of prosperity and growth for the people. But people have really sort of forgotten that their traditional building materials, their beautiful murals, the cooling mud that is used, the thatch from the forests that are used to really build their homes, and we are the only living ecology now that showcases this.
How did this whole idea come up? I mean, this like, you're doing so many things and which are like all very, relevant, important, and in a way very very meaningful, helpful to people. But how did this whole thing start? I mean, where did it start from? You said it's only 2 year old, and you're like saying so many things. Ye bhi hai, ye bhi hai, ye bhi hai. So how did it come up? Like, where did the idea come from?
So, it's actually been extremely organic, as I shared before. It's really taken its own course of time. We did a lot of research and study before we launched Unnati Cultural Village. Unnati Cultural Village is 2 years young, but the project of Unnati herself is, we are 5 years young. So there has been a lot of study, a lot of research, a lot of design around the programs, and it's really grown on its own, and it's taken its own form, and it's constantly evolving. So maybe, when we have the next Samvaad in a few years, you will see many more pillars added to Unnati, and many more projects attached to what we are doing. But essentially, what our philosophy and our objectives are very much intact, is to harness, to educate, to promote, to preserve, and to enrich the creative and cultural industries.
And how big is your team? I mean, who are the people like, and how many people are working with you? In this whole um, enterprise. It's like huge. I think. Tell me
So
about
the
your
team
team.
is, is actually extremely young and quite small, but extremely dedicated, hardworking, and passionate. I think we are really driven by passion.
Hmm.
That's essentially what really drives us, is the belief of what we're doing and the passion behind it.
Mm.
And no one is really a professor or a scholar or an expert in this. We've all grown organically. We learn through our experiences, we learn through people. I think people are the one, all our collaborators, our partners, our artists, our artisans are the ones who are constantly, I think more than we are enriching them, they are enriching us. And so it's been a very beautiful and a special journey. And my core team is about, we are about 15 people in the foundation at UCV and the foundation together. We are 15 people, but we have the entire family of Chaudhary group behind us. So it's really not in isolation again that we stand.
It's
It
again a
is the
village
entire,
to. It takes a village to
yes.
grow a child. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
That
it
way.
does. And I think the entire support of the Chaudhary group has really given the patronage, the support, the hand holding that they have given us. It has gotten us to where we are today.
So you also organize residencies for young artists from Nepal and I think India as well. So how does that happen? I mean, what do we tell our young artists in India if they want to? I mean, after listening to this intro, they would want to probably apply or Uh,
100% most welcome, most
so
welcome.
how does that happen? And when
So
is there a
it's
kind of
very simple. We are on all the social media portals. We have our website. We have our social media. We have, in that, all our email addresses and details are given, and we are always open for collaborations. So people can reach out to us anytime. In fact, most of the residencies have also happened very organically based on the requests and the requirements of the people within Nepal and outside. And people have applied very spontaneously and they've come. And we've been extremely open and welcoming to all. So, yes, so please feel free to reach out.
and what can as India can do? India and Indians basically. India is not. I mean, not just as a government, but also as a country. How can we help artists and artisans from Nepal to kind of find some kind of a uh, showcase their work here or expand their universe? What
I
can be
think
done
that's
from
a
our end?
very important question. It's something that we are constantly, as it has always been an ongoing effort from our part to take Nepal to the world.
Yeah.
And if the world can also extend a similar bridge to Nepal, it would really be very encouraging for the creative ecosystem over here, because there is a lot of talent. There's a lot of aspiration and ambition for people to learn and grow, to have exchange programs. So I think the most encouraging way would be to start with universities and institutions who are willing to extend scholarships, to extend learning programs, workshops, to send their faculty to our universities, to have those crossovers from the education space, because that is the most impressionable and important time for an artist, is their formative years of learning and growing. And I think if collaborations start that early, it really helps them build courage and confidence to enter into the mainstream, and also already develop existing ties with institutions for their future artistic careers whenever they branch out individually and independently. So I think from the education space, if collaborations can start out, it'll be extremely beneficial.
You also have a connection with Rajasthan. I mean, when we talked last, I gathered that. So when you go to Rajasthan, Surbhi ji, what do you carry? What gifts do you carry from your Unnati village? And what are
You
there
know,
any
it
art?
is it is actually, Rajasthan itself is like a treasure trove for every art under the sun, whether you call it paintings, murals, textiles,
Nature,
embroideries,
textiles,
dyeing, pottery, jewelry,
puppets.
architect. It's endless, right? So
Yeah.
it's like a treasure trove and haven to add anything that would be different or variant from it. But there are many things but there are many treasures that Nepal has as well. And one of them are our pashminas and kashmirs, which are very unique. It is very different from what you get in the other Himalayan regions of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Kashmir. It's very, very, or Bhutan for that matter. So our blankets, our shawls, our pashminas, our cashmeres are what I would love to take. And actually, there is a very strong association with Rajasthan and Nepal. The royal family introduced a kind of block printing into Nepal after being very inspired by the Ajrak and the other forms of the contemporary block printing that happens
Yes.
in Rajasthan. They were extremely inspired by that, and they brought it to Nepal,
Nepal.
and block printing started here. And through that block printing, we started developing khashtos. And khashtos are also inspired by Rajasthani daris and blankets,
Wow.
which are created by extremely soft organic cotton, and it's called kadambari. So the kadambari prints are what have has traveled from Rajasthan to Nepal and has become a national craft of Nepal now. Not the block printing, but the entire process of creating the
That's such a
kadambari blocks to
this is such
making
a great journey of, yeah, how things kind
so,
of travel
so
and find
that's
their shape.
why when we talk about art and culture, we can never talk about it in isolation, because
Absolutely.
the contribution to that has been there for centuries. It's not
Mhm.
very recent. It does not belong to Nepal. It does not belong to India. You know, the origins of it go way longer than when we were there.
Yes.
So yes, so this is what we try to do at Unnati, is to give homage to the arts and to celebrate it, and to celebrate its in inclusivity as much as we can.
So while I see this is a pretty rich kind of a, but the whole textured art, craft, art, artisanship, and all that. But at the same time, I mean, so and then other thing is like to look at this whole tradition, the impact of tradition as some sort of, which comes from the Hindu motifs or Buddhist motifs probably, is the, hills itself basically. And then what are the kind of modern motifs you get to notice in the modern Nepali art and aesthetic and art, works?
There is a lot of modern interpretation that has happened. So, in traditional art over here, it's very inspired by Buddhism. So, the hand motifs, the thangka paintings, lotus flowers, a lot of flora and fauna, usage of colors, traditional techniques of using colors. All of this is a traditional practice, but you'll see it also in our pottery. You'll see it in our paintings. You'll see it in architecture. You'll see it on temples. You'll see it in traditional dance forms, in costumes, in jewelry. But it has all taken a very contemporary style. So while the lotus is there, it has suddenly become more contemporary and it's not as ornate. But the delicate forms of the lotus are still very much there to be seen. Traditional motifs that are used for worship and prayers, whether it's metal craft or pottery, is very much there. But it has become more contemporary so that people find a use for it in their homes, not just in their temples and in their spaces of worship. Similarly, those forms have also traveled into carpets. So, carpet weaving is a very big industry of Nepal as well. And you'll find those forms in carpets, which are again not extremely intricate and highly textured, and but a contemporary version of it. And so it has retained itself, but it has also become relevant to today's times.
So are there a new breed of designers who have like kind of come into and worked with the artists to kind of make it, change it to contemporary times and their utility?
Yes, so we don't really have a very strong design ecosystem, but yes, the export houses here are what the design ecosystem are. So we get a lot of feedback from buyers, from agents, from international market trends. And based on those feedbacks and market requirements, a lot of the designs are then fine tuned and made more contemporary.
I think we are good. We are just about getting to be 40 minutes now. Anything you think that we should, have we missed out on?
I think we are fine. I think we can talk about the vision of Unnati and where we would like to see it, where
Yes.
it's.
So good. Where would you like to see Unnati in next 5 years, Surbhi?
I would really like Unnati to be resonated with as a strong representation of Nepal, and through the Unnati platform, people should have a new appreciation and resonance with Nepal. So, Nepal is currently associated with the majestic Himalayas, the flora, fauna, its natural beauty, the land of the Buddha, of peace, of tranquility. But I feel the culture, the arts, her cuisine, her crafts has not yet been explored and celebrated as much. And in the next 5 years, it is our vision to really bring it in the forefront, to bring it on a global platform, and to create many such centers so that people have a whole new association with Nepal and coming to Nepal, and which is not just for her natural beauty and her peaceful regions, but it's also to have a very immersive experience in Nepal's art and culture.
Tell me one thing. I mean, this which I remember. Then I forgot on this question. So, which was basically that after the whole structure of monarchy changed in Nepal and became a kind of a proper democracy. Did things change between what was as patronizing art and architecture and aesthetic as
Yes.
we have
That's a
witnessed in
very
other
important
places as well?
question, and that's a very relevant question. So the kings, the royal family, really patronized the arts to a large extent, and that's one of the main reasons why a lot of the Nepali art has really stayed intact. Because it's only in the last few decades that we are not a monarchy or a sovereign country anymore. We've actually become a democratic republic. So. Uh, while I would say that the arts are still flourishing, they are very much intact, but the kind of patronage that was once dependent on the royal family has now, there is a whole new breed of royals. And this applies to the whole world, to the global scale at large, not just to Nepal. Our industrialists, our hoteliers, our the corporates, the MNCs, the banks, the institutions, the public institutions are the new monarchy and the royalty of the
New
globe
patrons.
of the global art scene. And it is these institutions and the private sector that now needs to take a front stand and the responsibility to not only harness and mentor, but to preserve essentially what was and what should continue being in the art space, in the creative space.
Thank you so much. I think this was such a wonderful kind of conversation. Thanks for
Thank you
taking your
so
time out,
much.
Surabhi, and our best wishes to Unnati Foundation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you
much.
so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.